Blog Talk Radio.
There's a mystery lurking the forested areas of the world. Many have seen something, but what is it? Are they seeing known animals? They claim they walk upright, like a human. There are so many eyewitnesses. Can they all be wrong? Is someone just playing a trick on people? Or is it possible a large bipedal being could exist in the forests of the world? You have a decision to make. Do you believe it exists? These are the topics we discuss on Sasquatch Watch Radio. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is April 9th, 2013. Without further ado, let me get our co-host in here, the Creature Seeker. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Billy, and yourself?
Doing just fine. Feeling a lot better. That's all I know.
Well, that's good. The weather seems to be getting a little bit better as well, and if I see another snowflake, it'll be too soon. You know what I mean?
Well, I know. It's, every year we go straight from winter to summer, and that's what it feels like out here today.
Well, I'm all for it. We have a pretty exciting guest on tonight, wouldn't you say?
I would say so.
Should we bring him on?
How about you go ahead and do it? Introduce this fine guest.
I would be happy to do that. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest tonight, a fellow researcher, a person who I've actually seen speak many times, well, multiple times anyway, and always find his presentation fascinating. His name is R. Scott Nelson, and he is actually one of the speakers at Creature Weekend 2013 this year. Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Now, the first question I have, Scott, what's the R stand for?
We'll say Robert.
Okay.
There's an old Navy story I tell about that. All my old Navy buddies, I never would tell them what it stood for, so they decided it stood for Ricochet.
Well, Scott, I would like to thank you for your service in the Navy. You're in the Navy how many years?
Almost 20.
Wow. So you were a lifer, huh?
Yes, I was.
Now, how did you go from being a cryptolinguist in the Navy? Well, first of all, how does someone become a cryptolinguist?
Well, a cryptolinguist is one of the only jobs that require an extra test in order to be considered for the job. They give what's called a DLAB test, or Defense Language Aptitude Battery. And what this test does is it tests for a person's natural aptitude for learning languages. And the Navy and the military actually was first organizations that went out and discovered that there's a certain percentage of the human population that has a natural ability for learning languages, and there's only about 10 to 15% of the human population where language becomes very easy to them. The rest of us have to work very hard at it. And I passed that test with pretty high marks, and so I was accepted for the program.
And so basically you had to translate. Were you a translator mostly, or were you mostly just ciphering?
Well, I was well, you have to translate in order to decipher.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, you're doing you're doing both of it most of the time, and quite a bit of your time. And really, the skill that prepared me for this job is spending hundreds, thousands of hours under what we call the cans, the headphones, transcribing the human voice on tape.
Wow.
Even in languages that we did not know. I mean, we were trained in NATO transliteration, so we had to be prepared for languages that we weren't even trained in.
And you are fluent in several languages. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I would say I was fluent in Spanish and of course English. And I would say probably conversational in Russian and Persian.
Wow.
And now Sasquatch.
Do you also know Elvis?
I don't know what I'm saying when I'm speaking to Sasquatch. I don't know what I'm saying, so we have to hope it's something good.
Now, so you're a cryptolinguist. So how did you get into listening to Bigfoot vocalizations? Did you always have an interest in Bigfoot?
No, that's one of the first things I talk about when I do my presentation is, I never in my life really was I a Bigfoot guy. I wasn't interested in it at all, even though I grew up in Utah and I'd heard quite a few stories. I grew up right next to the largest Native American school in America, really, the Intermountain Indian School in Bountiful, Utah. And so, a lot of my friends were Native Americans. So I'd grown up with some pretty strange stories. But I had never had an interest or desire to pursue it at all. And then one afternoon, it was 2008, I had my son in my classroom with me. It was a day where he did not have class, but I was teaching my classes. So I used to take my kids up there to the college with me and, to pass their time, hoping that they would learn a little. But after class, we were sitting in my classroom, and he had a project due that was coming up that he had to write something on a subject of his choosing. So, he was 12 years old at the time. So, most 12-year-old boys, he wanted to do it on, UFOs or the Loch Ness Monster or on Bigfoot. So we were Googling the subject. And in the middle of that, he said, "Dad, what do you think Bigfoots sound like?" And I kind of remembered, some of the 1970s movies that I'd seen, and I just let out some kind of a weird howl. And he said, "Dad," he kind of laughed, said, "Dad, that's not what Bigfoot sound like." And I said, "Okay, well, let's find out. Let's Google it and see." So I literally Googled Bigfoot sounds, took me immediately to the BFRO website where the Sierra sounds were, the samplings of the Sierra sounds were there. And I clicked on one, and immediately after I heard it, it was what they call the samurai chatter.
Sure.
Immediately I recognized it to be language. And I think the reason that I did is because I'd spent so many years as a cryptolinguist, speeding the human voice up, slowing it down, listening to sounds, and knowing what they sound like when they're slowed down and speeded up. And I stopped and I ran it over again and over again and over again. And Stevie finally says, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I said, "Stephen, there's language here. This is not." I said, "This is not a human being on these tapes, but they're speaking a language." And I was pretty much, I was dumbfounded at what I was hearing. And that's what really started it all. I then, at that point, I said, "Stephen, we have to get our hands on these tapes. Somebody has to know already that there's language out there that's being spoken by something that's not human." So that kind of sent me on a little bit of a detective work, and I ended up getting a hold of Ron Moorhead, and told him what I thought. And he said right then on the spot, he said, "We've been looking for a guy like you for 35 years." He said,
Ron Moorhead said that?
Ron Moorhead and Alan Berry.
Oh.
And it was only a few days later that they had sent me the tapes. I received the tapes in the mail, and I began to transcribe them, which took me several months. And then I went out to meet them personally. And in that time, that's when I really began to research Sasquatch. And I could not. The overwhelming feeling that I had is I could not believe that I could possibly be the first person to recognize language in these tapes. And so I read every damn book I could get a hold of. All the scientific books, every single book, and not one of them had even a mention that Sasquatch had language, or even the ability for language. And then when I went out and actually met, and so I got the idea that, oh my God, I'm the first guy that ever discovered that Bigfoot has language. So I went out and met with Ron and Al, and the first thing they said is, "We always knew they had language. We knew from the first damn time that we were confronted by them up there on that mountain. We knew that they had language. We knew that they were speaking to each other in a strange language, and we knew that they were trying to speak to us in a strange language that they could not begin to comprehend." And that's when I knew, that I may have been in a unique situation with my training, that I was the one who was able to recognize that, the articulated phonemes and morphemes at real time that the normal person does not recognize until you slow it down for them and point it out to them, which is what I intend to do at your conference.
That's awesome. Billy, did you have any questions for Scott?
No, but we've already gotten our first question from the chat room.
Sure.
Well, actually not from the chat room, but from a private message that they sent me. Flycatch would like me to ask you, Scott, if you can compare the human voice box to that of Bigfoot.
Not being a scientist in that sense, or a biologist in that sense, I don't know too much about the voice box itself. What I can say is that the sounds that are on the Barry Moorhead tapes are much bigger. They, I would have to say that I would have to attribute that to a huge lung capacity. I don't know how that affects the voice box itself. I imagine that a voice box could be the same size as ours, except for they're so massive in size. I would have to assume that their voice box is bigger than ours. But I think the biggest difference would have to be the lung capacity. and their ability to articulate sounds and morphemes, which go in frequency, go above and below the ability of humans.
Okay.
And that's what the Barry Moorhead tapes demonstrate very clearly, is that these are not humans because they go above and below the ability of humans, both in frequency, pitch, resonance, absolutely in resonance. They're just so massive in sound, in the sound that they produce. And one of the most interesting differences is the tempo at which they deliver, the prosody that they, what's called a prosody, or the speed at which they deliver their utterances is at least twice as fast as ours, in most cases. Sometimes you will, and on Ron's tape, just as he explained it to me, he thought that they were trying to slow their voice down, their utterances down. He feels that they were actually trying to get him to understand them. So it's quite evident on his tape that they actually are trying to slow their, compared to the Barry tapes, that they're actually trying to slow their voice down to get the hunters up there to understand them.
Wow. I wish they'd do that down at the Dunkin' Donuts I go to every morning.
Oh, boy. And we've been trying to get them to do it ever since I got involved.
Well, you must be having trouble at the Dunkin' Donuts. I have trouble at the 7-Eleven.
So, Scott, when you first met Ron Moorhead,
yeah,
did he steal your chair? Because trust me.
Did he what?
Did he steal your chair?
No, I first met him in his home, and there were quite a few chairs there. That must be an inside joke between you and Ron.
Well, it's not so inside anymore, but yeah. So I'll talk about it at the his dinner presentation. But
sure.
When I first met Ron, he stole my VIP chair that I paid good money for. But I'm not bitter about. I'm not bitter about it or anything. That's son of a. But if you get up and you leave your seat, he will snatch it the way an eagle will snatch a trout from a mountain lake. So just be careful.
I will.
We have another question in the chat room, right, Billy?
Yeah. Yeah. You talking about the one from Digger Dog?
Digger Dog, yes.
Okay. He says, has Scott had a chance to review the article regarding the baboons' pre-language and some of the Sierra sounds?
I have not. In fact, when I there was a doctor from the University of Tennessee who came down to my last presentation down in Atlanta, Dr. Miles, and she was going to send me something about that. So no, I have not. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Okay.
Because she hasn't sent that to me yet.
Okay.
Now, from what I understand, is that from what she told me at the conference there, and she had come down purposely to see my presentation. Dr. Lynn Miles. She sits on the editorial board of the Relict Hominid Inquiry, the one that's the academic journal that's edited by Dr. Jeff Meldrum.
Yeah.
So she had come down because she lived so close to Atlanta. She had come down for the purpose of listening to my presentation, and then we got together there, and that's when I had first heard about that. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that. There's also, by the way, a group of anthropologists and primatologists up here in the Midwest, up towards in Iowa, I forget the name of the city up there, that have a bonobo by the name of Kanzi.
Mm-hmm.
That Ron and I had first, in fact, Ron had sent me the article when we first got together about how these primatologists up in Iowa have a bonobo that they felt was attempting to speak English, except for, and literally in the National Geographic it said this, we think he's trying to speak English to us, but it's way too fast for us to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly the difficulty I was pointing out to Ron as to why it might be difficult for the Sasquatch to communicate to us.
Right.
So yeah, I'd be very interested. I cannot imagine that there are baboons that have some sort of a language. Now, and if it's a language, I would have to make this statement. A lot of people have an idea that when man first developed language, that we first went through an era of proto-language. Okay, if that era ever actually happened, it would have been very short. Because the idea that, and this is just a common, popular idea of our development, that we went through an era where we communicated through grunts and groans and things like this, and sign language. Okay? This is kind of a misunderstanding of the way that language would have developed, because we mostly believe now that if once a species, like ourselves, and before this we're only talking about ourselves, right, develops the ability for language, right, he would not have a word for one thing and not have a word for anything else. In other words, if he has a word for food, he's also going to have a word for water. He's also going to have a word for fire, for ice, the things that are anything that's anything that is in his environment that's important to him. He's going to have a word for it. It's not like they would have in other words, they wouldn't have the ability to create a word for one thing and not have the same ability to create a word for everything in their entire environment. So it's not like they would have a word for, man want woman, and the rest is, grunts and groans and this kind of stuff, right? And food, and pointing and grunting. That's just not, that's kind of a misunderstanding of the way that language would have developed.
That's pretty much how I order at the Ponderosa, Scott. So.
Oh, yeah? So what I would say about the baboons is, and I would love to hear it, because if they're saying that they have a proto-language, then guess what? That's language. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to transcribe it, get under the cans and listen to the tapes and put it on paper. Because if they've got a word for, I want food, then they have a word for everything else in their environment.
Scott, how do you compare what you've been researching with the Sierra sounds to other primates? I mean, it would seem that after you heard the Sierra sound, you say, wait a minute, like, how does this compare to other, lower primates? Have you ever?
Yeah, I get asked that quite a bit. The main difference is that the articulations, the phonemes and morphemes that are articulated on the Barry Moorhead tapes, right, are articulated through the same means that we have. They have the same apparatus for creating those sounds as we have. That would include the tracheal tree, the oral cavity, the tongue, the lips, the teeth, the voice box, all of this stuff. It has to be almost the same. Okay, and other primates simply do not have those apparatus. They simply don't have it. They're unable to make those sounds. So I've been challenged by some people saying, well, how do you know that it's not just somebody snuck up there on the top of the mountain 10 miles into the freaking Sierra Nevada mountains, right, and played a big tape of chimpanzees? I said, well, because chimpanzees don't sound anything like it. They don't have the ability to articulate the same sounds as we do. And I've isolated 39 phonemes from these tapes. These mean sounds
right.
articulated, specific articulated sounds.
Right.
All of them common to humans, and very few of them common to other primates. Primates are able to make what we would call maybe vowel sounds, ooh ah, that kind of stuff, right? But they don't have the ability to use the rest of the oral tree to create the phonemes.
Very interesting. Now, Allie, in the chat room, you kind of touched on this, but her question was, do you feel that Bigfoot can imitate human even in simple words such as hello?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you that Ron and I have actually experienced this. I've heard them imitate the voice of Ron's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Virtually the voice of Ron's daughter. One time when during a very difficult, our very first attempt to go back up to the Sierra camp, Ron was almost killed, and he'll tell you about all this at the conference. I'm sure we'll have time to sit back and tell the sea stories of all stuff that's gone on with us up there since we tried to get up there to duplicate the evidence. But I got him down off that mountain, and I'm not. I don't shy away from saying that I saved his life, even though he won't admit to it.
Would you just like to give the chair back?
Yeah, I like to say, I saved Ron Moorhead's life, so he owes me. Anyway, we made it down, and the next morning we heard something. We heard a sound coming from the forest that it sounded exactly like his daughter's voice, who had also been in the camp with us, not up on top, but down below. It's a long story, and we should probably save that for the conference.
Okay.
Sure. But absolutely, I believe I've heard them. I can tell you, I've heard them. I've heard them imitate. And I say I've heard them. Okay, did I see them do it? No. I can only say that what I heard could have been nothing else. I've heard them imitate owls, only they were 800-pound owls. Right? I've heard them imitate coyotes, but they were 800-pound coyotes. And I've heard them, and not just voices, not just vocalizations of other animals. We've actually heard them imitate things that were not vocal at all, other sounds, like mechanical sounds.
Huh.
Mechanical sounds and metallic sounds. And since we experienced that ourselves, I mean, I researched it and I found out that this happens almost routinely. People hear sounds up there on the top of those Sierras. There's no possible way that you hear metallic sounds. Yet, for instance, I'll tell you one that we heard very, very clearly: the sound of a cowbell. There's just no other explanation for it.
Now, is there any power lines or anything on the Sierras?
Oh God, no.
Nothing.
No.
Okay.
No, God, no. Not where we are. There's no way you could get a power line over that.
Okay.
No. And well, you know what? I'll tell the rest of that story with Ron being present, because he is such a good skeptic. With everything that he's observed in his life up there in those Sierras, you know, he still maintains a healthy skepticism. You know, so here I am, one of the few outsiders that he's ever taken up there. Right? I'm wide-eyed and bushy-tailed for, you know, everything, and I've got my teenage son going up there with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time we actually made it up there. We no sooner drop these packs than we start hearing these strange sounds. And Ron is still such a good skeptic. He's like saying, "Oh, there must be a cow around here." And I'm like, "Ron, there's no freaking cows up here, man." And he says, "Well, Scott, until I actually see a Sasquatch making a cowbell sound, you know, I have to attribute it to cow." I says, "Well, I don't have to. I don't have to do that. I'm an objective observer here. I can tell you there's no freaking cows up here, let alone one that's wearing a cowbell." So, and there's way more to that story. So, I hope I get a chance to talk about it at the conference.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those stories as well.
Yeah.
Billy, did Flycatch have another question?
Well, let me get this one from Brian Jeffries first. He instant messaged this one quite a while ago. He said, "Would you ask Scott if he's heard other recordings similar to the Sierra Sounds, and if so, were the Sasquatch phonetic alphabet the same, or does it change in different regions?"
The SPA, or the Sasquatch phonetic alphabet, that I put together would cover any phonetic articulation that they would be able to produce that was anything like ours. I mean, I can't imagine anything that they could do that would not be covered by the SPA. Now, are there differences? Yes, of course. There would be regional differences, just like there is, you know, with human language. But I would think not quite as much as human language, because humans, when they settle down into a place, they become isolated, and over time their language evolves and changes, right? And this is, of course, the reason that we have so many different languages. You know, you would think, well, the Native Americans, before European man came here, you would think, you know, that they were one big happy family. Therefore, why would they not have their own language, the same language? And no, this is not true. I mean, the Native American languages alone are upwards of 600.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because, and some of them different from one valley to the next, because of the way language changes with isolation. So yes, I would say I would have to say that there should, for instance, the skunk ape, I would imagine, would have words that it had learned down there. You know, different from words that a Sasquatch up in, you know, northern Canada or western United States would have learned.
I wonder if the Canadian Bigfoot say "a" after every vocalization.
Oh, you have to think they would.
I don't know. I need to find me a southern redneck Sasquatch so I can understand it.
And we'd have to assume that they have different pastimes too. So the Canadian Sasquatches would obviously be able to play hockey, right?
Well, you all can block that hockey puck. I'm staying away from it.
I hear that.
Scott, your bio seems to be a little bit more honest than Mr. Moorhead's bio, and it says here that you're into Irish hurling. Now,
yes,
in college, I had some roommates who also were into Irish hurling, and
I see.
I think there are probably two different things. Can you explain what Irish hurling is?
I get this a lot, even from my students. I say, I'd say, well, I've got a hurling match this afternoon, and my students laugh, think, should you be telling us that? No, it's not American hurling. American college pastime of hurling, where you drink as much as possible and then, hurl it up. No. Irish hurling is the most ancient field sport in the world. Goes back to possibly 1,000 years before Christ in the Irish mythologies. The Irish gods played hurling. So, and then of course the Irish would claim that all other field sports evolved from Irish hurling. Yeah. It basically, here, this is the way I explain Irish hurling. It's like rugby football, except for the ball is like a baseball, and everybody on the field has a bat.
Wow.
That's the basis of Irish hurling. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say you probably, when you're out on the field, you probably don't slip that ball into your pockets, right?
No. No.
Now what's Gaelic football then?
What's what?
Gaelic football.
Gaelic football was derived from Irish hurling during the days when the English outlawed weapons to the Irish. Irish could not have weapons. They couldn't even have shillelaghs or sticks, which included their hurley sticks. They knew that the Irish had used their hurley sticks to practice warfare for hundreds of years. It's shaped kind of like a battle axe. So once the English realized that, they outlawed the sport of hurling to the Irish, and so they had to come up with something else. So they decided to use a cow bladder and kick it around the way they would an Irish, a hurley ball, and that's where Gaelic football came from.
A cow bladder?
Well, yeah, just like they say, soccer balls came from a cow bladder and rugby balls and all of that. So.
Wow, it's just a way
to maintain their Irish the pride in their Irish sports, and still not get arrested for playing an outlawed sport.
That's kind of scary because pretty soon around here we might have to start hitting baseballs with our hands because they're going to have ban bats.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. That's right, yeah.
Sorry for the political joke. Okay.
Oh, yeah. They're not wasted on me, I'll tell you.
Brian Jeffrey said, in your 75-page report on the Sierra Sounds, is it available for public to view?
I'm sorry, you were cutting up there a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, he was saying the 75-page review you did on the Sierra Sounds, is that available for public view?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. It will be.
Good.
Yeah. Scott, what are you currently working on? Are you working on anything that you can mention or talk about related to this analysis?
I'll tell you what. The most important thing that could happen for us right now, and we've been working on it for the last 3.5 years, and that is to get some duplication of the evidence. Okay, we have the Sierra Sounds. We essentially have almost 90 minutes of interaction, articulation by the Sasquatch, and interaction with the hunters that were up there, including Ron Moorhead. But what we've been trying to do since then, and we've been up on the top of that mountain either 8 or 9 times for different expeditions, and yeah, believe me, each time is a labor of love and money. So and we've come close. We've never quite gotten what we need. Okay, so at the same time, and this was one of the reasons I put out the SPA in the first place, was to try to solicit submissions from other people who have been lucky enough to catch little snippets, little morpheme streams out there that they couldn't explain in any other way. And so over the last 2-3 years, I've been receiving and collecting and documenting other submissions, other audio clips that people have sent to me, and trying to decide whether or not they could possibly come from the same being. And this is one of the things. This is one of the most important things to me. This is what when I go and speak at these conferences, one of the most important things to me is when I do reach out to the audience and ask them for their help. Because all of them are, believe me, every bit as good of researchers as I am. And the holy grail for us is to get one or two pieces of evidence that are exactly, corroborate what we've got with the Barry Moorhead tapes. That's really where we're at right now. And let me just say a word about what I've received so far. And I believe that at least, if not 100% of the audio clips that I receive, at least 95% of them come from people who are very well-meaning, very, very good at going out and getting sounds, and very serious about it. Okay, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult for me to get back, to get back with them and say, what you've sent me, thank you for sending it to me, but it's not what we're looking for. It's not the being that we have recorded in the Barry Moorhead tapes. It's caused me to have to revise the SPA to where I can say when I transcribe an audio clip, I have to be able to say from the analyst's point of view whether or not I believe that this is it has to fall either above or below the ability of a human being in order for me to say definitively that I believe that this could be a Sasquatch. See, now I've gotten numerous tapes that are very good, articulated sounds in what could very possibly be an unknown language, but they might still fall within the ability of a human being, to articulate those things. And when I get those, then I simply cannot come out and say, and I've had some people come back at me and say, oh, you're calling me a liar. And that's been part of the difficult part of it. I said, no, not at all. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the audio clip that you've sent me falls within the ability of a human being to do it. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value as a research, as a piece of evidence for research. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's kind of the things that we're dealing with now.
Do you ever feel that? So you set a fairly high bar. Do you ever feel that you may have set the bar too high, or do you feel that absolutely, in order to to get mainstream science on board with this, this has to be the criteria?
Yes. You said it as good as I could have said it. It's exactly right. That's in fact that's the original purpose for even creating the transcription standard that we call the SPA, is so that from the very beginning, the very infantile stages of the language research, that we are doing it in the right way, with the rigors that are required of anything that's going to be taken seriously by anyone.
Now, you've had some formal training, and the vast majority of people who research probably have not had the benefit of that training. Do you feel that is a hindrance or a challenge for unraveling this mystery, or do you feel like it's probably the untrained person who might come forward with the best evidence?
Exactly. I think you're exactly right about that. I'm stuck here in Kansas City. I mean, do I believe we have Sasquatches in Missouri? Yes, I do. Right, but there's not many of us out there, making, setting up tapes for all night long. I believe that the best thing that I can do right now, for Ron and I both, is to reach out to all of the people that we talk to out there, and plead to them. Anything that you get, send to us. Let us take a look at it, because sooner or later, and this is my very strong belief, sooner or later someone's going to get exactly what we need. And it's not going to come from the scientist out there. It's going to come from the lay person that's dedicated and gets out there every weekend, and dedicates his time and his money and neglects his family life and every damn else thing to get out there because it's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that we have to depend on. They're the ones that in every conference I go to, I make this very clear. Those guys sitting out in that audience, they're the ones that I respect for even having gotten me into this situation in the first place. And they're the ones that we have to depend on, to bring in the real evidence. The likelihood of the one single person like myself that's looking for the one single piece of evidence, being the one that actually finds it, it's astronomical, the odds against it. So of course we depend on every single person out. That's why we love these audiences so much when we go and talk to them. We learn something every single time we talk to an audience at a conference.
So Scott, when you go out to collect evidence, what sort of equipment do you use? And being, I'm sort of interested because you're someone who has been formally trained, and you probably had the use of some of the most expensive equipment that money could buy. But for, if I came to you and said, Scott, I'm thinking of going out and going to an area where there's been a history of vocalizations, what equipment would you recommend that I would bring to that?
Something very simple. It can be any digital recorder that you can carry with you that is not imposing. I know a lot of guys carry these big ears, or what do they call them, the big...
the bionic ears?
Yeah, the big bionic ears with them. And most of the stuff that they send to me is not usable because it makes an insect crawling on a wall somewhere, sound like who knows. It just amplifies things so much that, or they're hearing something that is so faint, that is so far away, and the only way they've gotten it is through these big ears, and they've come to a conclusion that it's the Sasquatch family having a birthday party or something like this. So I get that. I personally use a Zoom, what's called the Zoom, little digital recorder.
Yep.
Very good one. It's I think they're cheaper now than when I bought them. Ron uses something else. He used a Zoom for a while until his got burnt up. So he uses something else entirely. But here's the main thing that I have to tell everyone that I talk to that wants to record sounds for my purposes is that when you send me an audio clip, it cannot be cleaned up in any way. It cannot be enhanced in any way. or have had any filters put on it. It has to be just the raw sound of the vocalization as you would have heard it with your own ear. This is the only thing that's going to be usable for us in our research.
So it basically has to be just untainted. It's got to be. It can't be amplified. It can't be modified.
No, because I would do that. I will do the amplification if I have to. If it's something very, very faint and you think there's something there, then let me do the amplification. And the problem with that is normally when people amplify it, it distorts it.
I see.
It distorts it too much. You guys know when you turn an amplifier up too high.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Jimi Hendrix got distortion, right? Turning the amps too high. So it can't be anything like that. If it's something that I'm going to be able to compare to the Barry Moorhead tapes, it has to be something in its purest form.
Okay. So
which can be recorded on, very very simple, as long as it's a good digital recorder.
Scott, what do you use to review the recordings with? Do you use software? Any particular software you could recommend?
I use transcription software, which, by the way, when I started out in the Navy, for cryptolinguists, we had transcription software, right, that allowed us to slow the voices down, speed them up, change the pitch, change everything, and just to try to do the best job of recovering the phonemes and getting them down on paper, right? When I first started out, these transcription programs were classified. Now, of course, you can get on it. You probably find 5 or 10 different ones, on the internet. But I use a specific one called, of all things, Transcribe.
Is it because that's just what you're familiar with?
That's just one that I found, and it fit perfectly, and it was exactly like the ones we used to use in the military, and so it was easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
Very, user friendly. And by the way, and that's at the conference. I'll demonstrate exactly everything that I demonstrate will be demonstrated on that specific program.
Great.
And you'll be able to see it. We'll be able to put it up on the big screen. You'll be able to see it as I do it. So, it's pretty much an open book as to what I do. There's no secret to it at all. It's just takes a certain ear and a huge amount of time.
What do you recommend for best practice? Do you have the most luck going out and call blasting and then waiting for a return call blast, wood knocking, or are you more likely to just leave your recorder on and then leave the area and then come back for the recorder the next day?
What I've done, and Ron disagrees with me a little bit about this. Ron believes that you should go out there and be passive and turn the recorder on and wait for them to come to us. Okay, and I've sort of been in the other, really 180 degrees out from that. And I don't believe that call blasting does anything, because I think that when you're call blasting, you're trying to trick them. And I'm fully convinced that they're way too smart to be tricked. I think they know what we're doing. And if you get some return from a call blasting, I think, just like on the Finding Bigfoot show, you might get a little whoop or something like that, but that's all you're going to get, and then they're going to be gone. I believe that they're so smart that we take 1 or 2 steps into their territory, into the forest, and they know everything we're doing. Mm-hmm. Just as if, the only way I illustrate that is if you could imagine a Sasquatch stepping into your backyard. You know, you're going to know you're going to know every damn thing that Sasquatch is doing. And so, except for if it's at night, Sasquatch might be smarter than us, you know, in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do when I go out is I take the transcripts with me, and I will speak to them out loud. I'll call out to them, speak to them almost constantly. I have a drum that I take with me as well sometimes. I'll sing Scottish and Irish folk songs because I believe that, you know, in the concept that, you know, I don't know about my voice, but, you know, music is supposed to soothe the savage beast, right? But so I'll do that. Just anything that I feel will invoke their curiosity, entertain them, if that's possible. And I think they're very, very curious from some of the things that's happened to us. But here's what I do with the language. I'll go out and I'll speak in English to them very clearly. Then I will speak to them in Spanish and say the same thing. Then I will speak to them in Russian, saying the same thing. Because, you know, so many of our words are the same. You know, are cognatic in the different languages. Then I'll speak to them in Persian. Then I'll speak to them in an ancient Indo-European language, from the central steppes of Asia, called Avestan. And I'll try to say the same thing in all of those languages, right? So my intent is to show them unequivocally that I am attempting to communicate with you. And I've had relatively good success. I've never had a morpheme stream come back, but we have had numerous times. Ron's heard it himself. Certainly me and my son have, even around in this area. What I call a concession snarl. And to me, it's a way for them to answer back to you without answering back. For them to let you know that they are there and that they've heard what you're trying to do. And it sounds pretty much like, and we have numerous examples of it on the Barry Moorhead tapes, right? And it sounds like this. It sounds like a whoosh, and then a snarl. And I've heard that numerous times in response to my language projections. And that's just for my voice. It's not any call blasting or blasting out of the Sierra sounds or any of that. I believe when you're out there in the woods, if they're around at all, they are very well aware of you. And so they're going to be close enough to where they can keep an eye on you and certainly well within hearing range. So I don't know about, what the purpose of this call blasting is, other than to scare them away.
Before we go off the air, because we got about another minute before we go off the air.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Henry May had a question. He wanted to know if you've ever examined any other possible Sasquatch sound recordings for language other than the Sierras.
I've examined several dozen.
Several dozen, okay. And also,
I've had numerous since I started this, and have solicited submissions from people. I get them all the time. I receive them all the time over the internet. Now, out of those, very few of them could I definitively say that they are the same critter, that's on the Barry Moorhead tapes. But this is exactly what I do. I ask for these. If you've got something, you need to send it to me. Please. because it may make all the difference.
Oh yeah.
One of the events that we're hosting again at Creature Weekend, we did this last year. It was very well received. Is the Bring Your Own Evidence luncheon. So.
Oh yeah.
At I think I can't remember the time. It was either 11 or 12 on Saturday before the conference in May. We allow the attendees just to bring their cats, photographs, drawings, footprints, and stories.
Oh,
and
believe me, I'll have my headphones there. Anybody has something they want me to listen to, I'm all ears. So
that'll be interesting. You know, if someone does bring some sort of vocalization that you could take a look at.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And Billy, did you want to ask any more questions?
No, that was all the questions that we had from the chat room and from all the private messages. We're now into the archives, so we may want to make sure that everyone knows the dates of Creature Weekend while we're here.
Sure. This year, Creature Weekend will be May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So that's coming right up. It's the first weekend in May. And Scott will be speaking on Saturday, May 4th. And for details, you can go to www.creatureweekend.com. We do have a few tickets available, and if we have any extra seats that are available, they will be available at the door. But I encourage people to send in their registration in advance just so that they're guaranteed a seat. And Billy, you also have a conference coming up at the end of this month, right?
Yes, I do. And let me get over to that real quick while we're waiting here. That's coming up at the end of this month. It's going to be up in New York, and that is the 2013 Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo. It's taking place on April 26th, 27th, and 28th of 2013. And if you want to get more information on that conference, you can go to www.chautauqualakebigfoot.com.
Great. So, Scott, will you be performing any of your songs at Creature Weekend this year?
It depends on how good the beer is.
I'm told the beer is very, very good, Scott.
Okay, very good. Good Irish beer get you a long ways with me.
Well, hopefully Ron will bring a guitar this year. I've been bugging him to bring his guitar.
I'm hoping. I'm gonna get on his case too about that. So we'll see if we can't make him do it.
Yeah, he was at Beachfoot with his guitar, and he was over in the brush practicing, and he never did perform, but he was I know he was strumming away at his guitar, hoping to make a grand debut, but and that never did happen.
I tell you, I'm really looking forward to it, man. This is from your description and everything I've heard. This is a very different conference from anything that I've done before, and it sounds like it's going to be very laid back, fun oriented, which is quite refreshing, really, from so many of these conferences that, frankly, take themselves a little bit too seriously. But yeah, we do have a very serious thing we're trying to accomplish here, but we might as well have fun doing it, and that's that's just the feeling that I get from your description of what we're going to be doing up there, and I can't wait.
Well, Billy, you were there last year, and you've spoken at conferences, all over. What was your impression of the conference last year?
Well, I mean, Scott is correct. This conference, just the same as last year, was a very laid back. It was laid back. Everyone got along. Drama free. That's always the best.
Oh heck yeah!
And I mean, just everyone was polite. Everybody was just, it was a good time. That's really what it boils down to. Everybody had a great time, and that's
awesome.
That's all you can ask for.
Heck yeah. And if we're going to do it, we might as well have fun doing it.
That's
right. So it should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. I've spoken with the volunteers. They're looking forward to it. They had a great time last year, and it's just going to be, it's just going to be a lot of fun. And it'd be interesting, it'll be interesting for me because this is your first time at Salt Fork. Actually, Pat Spain's never been to Salt Fork, and David Pilates. All three of you have never been to Salt Fork. So It'll be kind of interesting to get some feedback from, your experiences there as first-timers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's definitely a beautiful place.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And then, there's the sort of the icing on the cake is that, it's a place where there's been activity in the past. So it's the perfect venue for a conference like this.
Yep.
Cool.
So.
That's for sure. All right. Well, if you all don't have anything else, I guess we can wrap this show up.
Sure thing.
Scott, thanks so much for coming on the show. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
And
Bruce, thank you for getting him here anyway.
It was my pleasure, and it was a great time. I can't wait to continue our conversation at Creature Weekend in May.
Yep, it's going to be a good time. We're looking forward to it. All right, well, that wraps up another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio, you guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Thanks for those that are going to be listening to the archives. And we'll see you all next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Remember to join us again next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We appreciate every one of our listeners. Thank you so much for being here.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you are ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.